and welcome back to another episode of BizBlend, the podcast where the leadership means heart and wisdom meets the messy and beautiful truth of being human. I'm your host Avik, and today's episode is all about a topic that keeps so many modern leaders up at night. Yeah, like why we're desperate, all the check-ins, Slack messages, and like how are you really moments kind of, and do we still feel invisible to our teams? Yeah, so we are exploring the powerful difference between the, I'd say, the vulnerability and transparency, and at the same time why mastering this delicate dance might be the missing piece in your leadership style. Yeah. So, dear listeners, our guest today is someone who brings both fierce intelligence and deep soul to this conversation. Please welcome Emily Erstad. So, welcome to the show, Emily.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, before we delve deep into the discussion today, I'll quickly love to introduce you with Emily. Um, Emily is a healthcare executive, hospice director, indie author, and a mentor to emerging leaders who want to lead not just with the strategy, but with the soul. And she's navigated some of the most emotionally complex environments, like from hospice bedsides to boardrooms. And uh, she's here to share what leadership really looks like when it's done from the inside out. Yeah. So, dear listeners, if you have ever felt like you are too much, not enough, or just endlessly misunderstood as a leader, then this conversation is for you. So, wait, let's get started. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, like I said. Excited to talk on a topic that I feel like a lot of us may have touched on, but don't have a lot of strategies or maybe tools to kind of evaluate where we're at in our leadership journey and, grow from that place.
Exactly, true. And like to start with, I mean, you say that many developing leaders like feel invisible, like even when they are kind of trying to do all the right things. So the thing is like what's really going on beneath that I am checking constantly but still not connecting kind of phenomenon.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's important to evaluate your environment, evaluate where your energy is going. Where are you putting a lot of your mindset that's maybe not productive, right? I think it's constantly a give and take in leadership. You join a new company, or you're in middle management, or you're a new leader, and there's a to do list, a mile long, but none of it's really impacting your team or really helping you grow yourself or build that trust with your team. So I think that first step is always acknowledging what your priorities are and your communication style and who you are as a leader to leverage that and exacerbate your strengths instead of being caught up in the chaos.
Yeah. True. And like, is it possible that being overly available or maybe overly transparent is actually creating disconnection?
100%. When I talk about vulnerability and transparency, it's a very much a spectrum, right? And instead of looking at it as like a caution sign, I encourage you to look at it as a tool to evaluate yourself and how comfortable you are with your coworkers, how comfortable you are with yourself. I've always kind of said, you want to be transparent with who you are first, who your core values are first, before entering the vulnerability stage of a relationship. But I think frequently we're looking for connection, and sometimes we'll confuse increased vulnerability with finding a connection with someone when maybe the other person is overwhelmed or feeling like they're not connecting with you, which leaves you feeling anxious and then your communication partner feeling overwhelmed. And that's probably not the solution you were looking for.
Understood. I mean that's such a mind shift basically. Like sometimes we think that pouring out everything is helpful, but uh, it can actually feel overwhelming, like or maybe misdirected to the team. So uh, yeah, I mean yeah, I agree totally agree. And also like you have spoken about like that edge of your seat, that anxiety many leaders feel. the everyone's mad at me kind
Yeah.
of feeling. So especially for those who've been told that they are either too intense or um, not enough. So what's your advice for the leaders who are caught in those kind of loop?
Yeah. If you're feeling intense, I would encourage you to look at your goals and be very transparent with your goals with your leadership team. I think, Rome wasn't built in a night, and it definitely takes more than one person to affect change. So if you're feeling resistance from your team that's causing that anxiety or just an outburst of emotion every time you're giving a direction, that is the time to be a little bit more vulnerable. That is the time to introduce that transparency and say, "Team, this is where we need to go. This is where we're at. I can't do this by myself, right? Like I need your support. I need you to kind of work with me." So, taking the time to learn what your team's strengths are, and then unifying those towards a common goal. I think quite frequently we all think we're on the same page. We're all thinking we're doing the same goal, but like picture being on a boat and everybody paddling different directions. It's not going very well and that's not effective for you as a leader. So it's very important to have that clear intention to begin with before even having these conversations. I think intention and trust are what come from transparency and vulnerability, right? Like, when you're transparent, you know what your intentions are, you know where you're headed. Vulnerability is that opportunity to build the trust, to show some of those deeper layers to your team of this is why, this is the why behind it. I find most people are willing to work with you when they're a part of the goal, a part of the team, a part of the why. And if the why is to work smarter, not harder, if the why is to accomplish big goals so that there's more time to invest in your team's leadership and emotional intelligence, I can't imagine why someone wouldn't want to jump on that bus.
Exactly. Yeah. And also if you can share like how do we start kind of untangling that fear
Yeah.
and still show up with the presence.
Once you've identified, you're aware of it, you're like, okay, this is what scares the crap out of me, whatever that might be. Find a mentor, find someone that you can look up to that can guide you through some of these harder conversations. I've had a few in my lifetime that, I go to them when I say, this is my goal, this is what I want to say. Don't be afraid of having those conversations. That's when the vulnerability is super important, right? Vulnerability with the right person at the right time with a clear intention. I think it's okay to say, "Yeah, I don't know if I have all the tools I need to be successful in this moment right now. Can you give me some insight, some wisdom, some feedback from your experience?" I think it's also when you have a fear, don't go, I tend to be the type of person that jumps in full force. I don't really have fear. It's funny, my husband's always like, you just jump into everything you do and get it done, and that's a great quality to have until you're a bull in a china shop in a delicate scenario, which I've been too. So I think, having that foundation of awareness and the observation of your team, and then incorporating that with some consistent structured feedback that shows your team over time we're working towards a goal, but, none of this works without consistency and a clear action plan.
Understood. Yeah. And also like if you can also break down about the vulnerability versus transparency spectrum, like how can leaders use this spectrum to show up authentically without losing some trust and diluting the credibility. So what
It's interesting, it's kind of organic. I wish there was a complete playbook of, "This is when you should say this," right? Like, wouldn't that make life so much easier? I think that's why human nature and leadership is such an art, right? Because it's dynamic to each person, to each team, and what I did at my previous team, I do differently now. My previous team, I definitely went in full heart, ran into an acquisition that was very emotional for that team, emotional for me because it was a high stress environment, learning a lot of things about myself and the team and new strategies, right? And then this next opportunity I took in December, I went in a lot more relaxed and observant and kind of let the team tell me who they were going to be. And I can't say I would have done either any differently. I think both took a unique approach. And that's where really taking the passion that you have, if people are telling you you're too much or I feel this or that, and investing it in yourself and having a diversity of input, whether it be books, podcasts like we're doing now, mentorship, to get that clarity and that direction for your own passion. Because if you don't have it for yourself, you're not going to be able to do it to other people. And that vulnerability is a radical tool that you can use with small groups, with trusted sources to just get real and say, hey, this is where I'm at. I don't know if I'm doing this right. I need your insight. You might feel like you're talking this till you're blue in the face, but that's okay because you need to learn where you're going. And I think, if you're having that fear no matter what age, like I said, check your environment, make sure it's aligned with who you are, your goals. Sometimes you just have to jump in despite that fear and learn from whatever comes out of that. I've gone through scenarios where I've taken big risks, and those risks have always taught me the biggest lessons and been the biggest rewards. Um, Vulnerability is not my favorite place to be, but I think when you want to be someone that affects change, it's something you have to get comfortable with quickly. Obviously, there's stages of it, there's levels of it,
Yeah.
but I would say even for myself, like writing this book, getting on these podcasts, that's a level of vulnerability I never would have even imagined back in the day that has been so aligned now with my career and my personal life. It kinda comes full circle, and that momentum is what's gonna get you over that next barrier, that next hurdle.
Exactly, I agree. And like when does vulnerability become oversharing, and uh, how can leaders spot that age? I mean, what do you say?
The oversharing, is that what you meant?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think be mindful of where you're at. Go in with, like, "This is my goal of conversation." If you're going into a conversation and it's a work-related, topic, go in with clear objectives, get your bullet points across, make sure that you're rounding back to those points. Know your communication partner. If that communication partner has a lot on their plate, they're overwhelmed, whatever it might be, or they're just a more direct, concise communicator, meet them where they're at. They might have 110 things on their plate that if you just offloaded a few of those, could give them that time to have those conversations that you're looking for. But I think it is important when you're in the workplace to go in with the intention of, "We're here to get a job done." Get that done first. Because when you get those pieces done first, it creates that time and space for the conversation you're looking for to connect. You might actually get to learn about them so that you're sharing meaningful information instead of just sharing things about yourself that you might not have even been comfortable to share in the first place. And then it's just that anxious unwinding of your thoughts when truly all you wanted to do is get to know this person, but you're too busy filling the space with information that might not be useful to them. I have found myself in that situation a couple times and really had to just reevaluate, take a step back. If you leave those conversations feeling uneasy, second guessing yourself, find a way to approach that conversation where it feels productive and that you've accomplished something so that you can build that foundation of transparency to get to that bridge of vulnerability where you have the time to connect on deeper things.
uh, got it. Yeah. And that's I mean, this is such a game changer because vulnerability says I see you, and transparency says here's what I want you to see. I mean, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, that's a game changer for sure. And um also I'd love to mention that you teach about these three big transparency mistakes, like wrong audience, wrong timing, and the wrong intention. So if you can walk us through like about those, like why they are so common among the new players.
Yeah, when you're looking at emotional intelligence, because that's kinda what this whole conversation revolves around, right? We all talk about emotion till we're blue in the face, but, like, what does that really mean, and what are we doing with it? And so I wanted to take it a step further with my book, It's Not That Deep, and kinda give just maybe key markers of this is when you should be looking, and restructuring your conversation, right? And I'm gonna play out a scenario for you. You get to work, it's early Monday morning, it's 8:30, you just got out of a meeting, everybody has their to-do lists that are a mile long, they're catching up from over the weekend, and you might have that coworker that walks to each desk and just starts talking about what happened over the weekend, where they've been, what they're doing, when clearly everyone else is preoccupied and busy and trying to get something done. That is the perfect example of wrong timing, right? Like, that is not the time to connect, that is the time to knock out, whatever tasks that Monday morning has brought. And wrong place, maybe this person is preparing for a meeting, you're in a public space, or you're walking into a meeting, that's probably not the time to get into a heated or dark deep not dark conversation about whatever's going on in your personal life. That's probably not the time because their mindset's probably geared towards whatever, conversation they're going to have in that meeting. And then the wrong audience, like, are these people, do they know you? Are these people you wanna give that energy to? I think so frequently we give our vulnerability away as it, like, please connect with me, when really it should be uh, a trusted conversation you only have with few people. I think oversharing yourself and giving that away to people can
Mm.
truly also damage you. It might not be something you really wanted to share with someone. You're just looking for that connection with someone else. So that's where that intention is so important. Like, if you're just trying to connect with someone, find something common to talk about. Maybe don't dive into harsh conversations that maybe that person's going through too, and they're just not ready to talk about. And I think those are some common scenarios where people maybe aren't receiving your message the way you wish they would, because it's just not the right time, place, audience, whatever it might be to be sharing that vulnerable scenario. I think it needs to be a very controlled event, that you're specific with who you share it with.
I agree. I totally agree with this. And also, like, if you can also share, or maybe if you can mention, like, uh, what's a healthier approach when we want to be transparent and effective?
As a leader, I think one-on-ones are super important, right? Like, one-on-ones where you're going in with your goals, and I think when I'm doing leadership coaching with some of my staff, it's not just goals for work, it's goals for your personal life, it's goals for your health, whatever. Looking at yourself as the whole person kinda opens that door, right? Obviously, if this is your first meeting, that you might not jump into the personal side of things, but really understanding what inspires that person, what turns their gears. I think that's a first step to vulnerability, right? Like, people don't always share what inspires them. Sometimes people don't know, and so that vulnerability you're giving them is overwhelming to them. So I think having that one-on-one conversation where you're really getting on common ground and foundation of, this is where we're going, this is the purpose of this conversation, and that will organically bring up moments to connect on more vulnerable topics. You know, if you're a peer, same thing, lunch, coffee, when you're both done with the day and wanting to connect on a common project, those conversations typically will evolve into something more, and if they don't, then that just might not be the person you're supposed to be vulnerable with. Move on to the next person. Not everyone's a match for everybody else, and that doesn't mean anything about you or anything about them. It's just a different season of life, and that's okay too. And that's kind of why I say it's not that deep, right? Because you only get to say that once you've gone through all of these dynamics, and understand that sometimes really it isn't that deep, and giving yourself that permission to not feel rejected, but just to be indifferent.
Uh, exactly. Ooh, lovely. That's really lovely. And in your experience, how can we build the connection and credibility in this distinct dynamics without kind of slipping into the uh, code switching or inauthenticity?
Sure. I think first is, like I said, taking the time, making sure you know who you are, making sure you surround yourself with people that understand who you are as well. And then I think it's just consistency over time, backed by data, right? Like, you can't just say, because I feel this way, this makes it right. You have to be clear in your intentions, clear in your workload, getting that done first so that it makes room for all this other awesome development that we also truly want and need. And that development, like I said, can come from very different aspects: books, podcasts, webinars. I mean, search what lights your soul on fire. If you're not finding it at work, find a mentor outside of work. Look for avenues that fit your needs. And you have to be clear in those needs to even have those conversations. But as you start to develop these skills within yourself, it's really just consistency over time and constantly revisiting them and challenging yourself to level up. And that leveling up doesn't always look the same for everyone else. So I think, look for one-on-one coaching or find an opportunity, work towards that opportunity, accomplish that opportunity, set your goal or sights towards the next one. Um, but I also think it's important to recognize it's not always specific to professional life, right? Like, sometimes I have more professional goals, sometimes I have more personal goals, sometimes I have more relationship goals. Like, looking at yourself as a whole person to always find that inspiration that continually powers you to continually seek growth. Because I think if you're not growing, you're dying. And so I think as long as you keep that momentum going, it's going to figure itself out because you're going to be so aligned that trajectory and energy is going to take you where you need to go.
Exactly. Yeah. Lovely. So, wow, that's a great conversation, Emily. Thank you so much. And I'll say this conversation was a masterclass and kind of real leadership. and the kind that doesn't hide behind the job titles, but dares to show up fully that and fully human for sure. So for
Yeah.
everyone who's listening, yeah, yeah. So for everyone like who are listening right now, or maybe you will be listening, um, if you have ever struggled with whether you are doing too much or not enough as a leader, maybe the real question should be isn't how you show up, but why. So uh, I believe, and vulnerability and transparency aren't the weakness, but they are instrumental instruments, and uh, when played with the precision, they actually unlock something powerful, which is trust. Yeah. So, dear listeners, if today's episode has stirred something new in you, then follow Emily and read her into deep series and reflect on the way you um, connect with your team, with your peers, and most of all, with yourself. So, Emily, if someone wants to connect with you, what would be the best medium?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at it's not that deep underscore author. If you're interested in purchasing my book, it's on Amazon. Just search It's Not That Deep. My name's Emily Erstad. I also have an email, eepublicationsllc at gmail.com. Feel free to reach out, but I look forward to connecting with you. And I really appreciate having the opportunity to look at vulnerability, transparency, and all other topics that my book encompasses that can really help propel you towards your emotional growth. So, thank you for having me. It's been great being here.
Amazing. That's really amazing. So, dear listeners, I'll put all the details and the links into the show notes for your easy reference. And with this hope, until next time, stay bold, stay tender, and always lead from within. So, this is your host, Avik, signing off from BizBlend. Till then, take care. Thank you so much.